Hello, this is Mike Layton again, and returning today, we have Jeremiah Wilson. He's the founder and CEO of Conversa, and he's the co-founder of ListenForce. Jeremiah founded his company in 2001 and provided training and coaching in sales and customer service focused primarily on phone skills. Conversa today focuses on providing the most robust call tracking solution on the market, with tools for both tracking your marketing effectiveness but also improving your team's performance. And ListenForce uses recorded calls to analyze team performance and assign training videos based on the phone skills of those team members need to improve their individual performance.
Mike, thank you so much for having me back. I can't wait to share a little more with your listeners about how to help their teams improve their phone skills and, in turn, improve their bottom line.
Well, thanks for coming back. We've got some great material we've planned to discuss today to follow up on the previous webinar. Let's just dive right in. In our last webinar, we talked about how making even small changes to how we handle phone calls can have a huge impact on our bottom line. And this is especially true in HVAC, where the average phone call from a new prospect typically results in over $2,800 in average customer revenue.
That's right, Mike. We've spent years analyzing hundreds of thousands of phone calls, tens of thousands of minutes of phone recordings, and what we found will shock you as to how poorly most businesses handle their customer calls. These are businesses in a number of different industries, including automotive, glass, rent-to-own, even home services like HVAC, plumbing, electric. So let me play a call, an example of what many of these calls sound like.
Yes, good morning. My air conditioning unit is not putting out enough air. Is there any way I can get someone to check this out today?
Have we ever done your work before?
No, ma'am.
Where are you located?
I'm in Duluth.
Okay, we have an $89 diagnostic fee to come out and check it, and then from there they could tell you what's wrong with it and how much it would cost to fix it. It would be sometime after 2 this afternoon. They'd call you first.
Does that go on to the bill or what if you need...
It really depends on what they find. Yeah, it may or may not. It just depends on repair.
Okay. Well, I'll probably call you back then.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, so you probably noticed right away that the tone on this call was pretty bad.
Yeah, I did notice that. It doesn't sound like the agent was very excited about helping anybody. I'm always shocked that anybody would answer the phone like this.
Well, I would go so far as to say it sounded like she didn't want the business, that she was actually putting up obstacles that would prevent the person from wanting to say yes. It's shocking. Yet you'd be surprised how often this happens. The bad news is that this happens far too often. And the good news is that it's easy to fix. And moreover, if you can fix it consistently with your business, you will stand out from your competitors. Yet as bad as that tone was and that attitude was on this call, that isn't the worst part. The agent on this call failed to hit any of the areas that we have found to be the keys to closing a sale on a customer call. They failed to connect with the customer. They failed to listen or acknowledge what the customer was saying. They failed to make recommendations. And most importantly, they failed to ask for the business. Some people might think, by the way, that just saying it's $89 is asking for the business. Or we could come out, or it's $89. That is not asking for the business. Asking for the business here would have been, when would you like me to be there? When can I schedule this? But when she just dropped it right there and said it's $89 and then paused, the customer goes, okay, well, I'll get back with you. Don't give them a chance to do that. Give them price, ask to come out.
Yeah, I mean, each of those things are so easy to do, and it's just so devastating when they aren't done. I mean, one of the things we found is that there's almost always room to improve performance on phone calls and increase the booking ratio. I'm just always surprised that contractors are satisfied with, booking business on about 60% of their new customer calls, and the average from the 600,000 calls you've analyzed for us, plus all the other industries, it's really closer to 50%.
Yeah, isn't that incredible? 50%? The biggest thing here is that the return on investment for fixing this is huge. And for a very small investment of time, the potential payouts are just enormous.
I mean, it was right. So let's say that a dealer is doing $1 million a year from calls from customers and prospects, and their booking or closing ratio for the CSRs is only 50%. If they could just increase that by only 10%, they could do an extra $200,000 a year in sales, and that's in a small business. That's real money.
Yeah, we both know that while many of your dealers are in the 50 to 60% range, we've seen dealers that easily close 70 to 80, even 90% of their new prospect calls. So it is totally doable to bring up close ratios in the HVAC space.
So what do our listeners need to do to build a system that's going to allow them to consistently improve how their people handle customer calls?
Well, Mike, let me start by saying that any business can build the systems that we are going to talk about during this webinar today. Whether they use the tools we've spent years developing that we make available to them through Stochastic, or whether they buy from someone else, or whether they build it themselves. Ultimately, the only way to really solve this and improve your customer call close ratio is to implement a system. And while doing it yourself may seem like a great way to save money, it really can be hard to get the consistency you need. And consistency and follow-through are critical. That's why we have so many New Year's resolutions and so many new gym memberships and so few people that show up to the gym, right? So what we've built over the years are systems that are easy to put in practice and easy to be consistent on. Our tools take the hard work out of it.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit more about the system that it's kind of a do-it-for-you, do-it-with-you model. So tell me a little bit more about those systems.
Yeah, I mean, and just like the gym, we found that those that really want to be successful, they hire a coach. They hire somebody who's going to work with them and is going to be there for them. And that increases that stick-to-itiveness for that New Year's resolution, right? So let's start by talking about our ListenForce training platform. Interestingly, we started this clear back in 2001 when we were doing coaching and training. Along the way, we developed our training company into a call tracking company and got away from the human coaching and training. But there was still a huge need for teaching these phone skills. We wanted to deliver this in an automated way that would allow us to reach a much larger audience, so we created a separate company called ListenForce.
Okay. What exactly because it gets confusing, what does ListenForce do with Conversa's technology? And talk a little bit about the steps that people need to take if they're going to implement a successful training program.
All right. So ListenForce takes call recordings, analyzes them over the course of a month, and then delivers targeted training videos through our e-learning portal. A successful system for teaching your team how to answer calls correctly starts with establishing some best practices for phone skills. So we start by teaching those connect with the client. This is the making sure that they like you up front, that you show them that you're there for them, that you're giving them a yes mentality on the phone. Yes, I can help you. You don't need to call anywhere else. I'm going to make this easy for you. Connect with them, number one. Number two, listening skills. I understand you. I heard what you wanted completely. I dug into your answers and I probed and I figured out what really is driving your decision to call me today. And because I understand you better than anybody else, why would you want to go anywhere else? I listened to you. I acknowledged you. Number three, I showed you not only that I can connect with you and I listened, but I'm here to help you. I'm going to do this. I actually say those words to you. And then the fourth one is recommendation. This is where I say, based on everything you've told me, what I recommend is that you do this, 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 and this. And I become more of an advisor to them, more of a consultant rather than a salesperson. Don't get me wrong. We're always selling. Everybody's always selling. But I want to be more of an advisor. I want to be the person that comes up alongside them and supports them through all this new information that I've learned from them. So that's the recommendation. And then finally, step 5, the close. I ask for the business. Let's get this scheduled. Let me get my guy out. Let me get a credit card. I ask them for a next step that has them scheduling an appointment or giving me money so that I can actually lock in that arrangement. And I end their long search for going out and finding price shopping because I made it easy for them.
So there's really just 5 basics, right? I mean, that if you distill it down to that: connect, listen, acknowledge, recommend, and close. Just 5 things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you actually go and do the acronym on that, it's CLARC, Clark methodology. So we have this little figure, the guy's name is Clark, that drives all of that. And we teach the details of each of these skills to our clients, but in order for this to really work well, you have to record phone calls.
Okay, so why is recording the calls so important?
That's the right question. So recording the phone call allows you to go back and review objectively what the team is doing. A football game. You watch the NFL on a Sunday. It's an hour-long game. Yeah, it may take a lot longer than that to watch it, but it's an hour-long game when all is said and done. And during the week after that game, the coaches and the players are watching 40 hours of game film from all the different angles, talking about it, replaying it, 40 hours of game film during the week. And then they go out and practice it. If this is important for the top tier, sports teams in the country to analyze stuff, this is what we do for a living every day. We've got to do something similar to get us in our best game form. So you can listen to each call and determine whether they adhere to each of the basic phone skills, just like they would at a football game. Years ago, we did that by carefully listening to each and every call for our clients and scoring them on each of the phone calls we teach them. But over the years, we've gone in and trained our systems to listen to the calls for us. Using voice recognition software, we've spent tens of thousands of hours training our algorithms to listen for, identify, and score calls based on each of the skills we teach. And Mike, let me just point out, we're not just playing one game a week. We've got millions of calls going through from all of our clients, and so it didn't make sense to have an individual listening to every call. I had to figure out how to get artificial intelligence to do the work for us. And so instead of watching that game film as a team, we have a computer doing that for millions of calls every single month.
I think it's just kind of occurred to me how we've kind of glazed over you've taken it for granted, right? So just for our listeners, what we're really talking about is not a room full of people with pencils and paper making notes and filling out a form. We're talking about artificial intelligence, computer algorithms that are listening to all the calls, right?
Yeah.
Unbiased algorithms. So what was the artificial intelligence approach to this problem? And how's that allowed you to do things that you were not able to do prior to when you started doing this as really kind of the innovator, the patent holder, in fact, for those listeners that are here first time. So how did that patent allow you to do things that you couldn't do previously?
Well, so human scoring of calls is great, and it really can be more accurate. And humans can still pick out lots of nuances that voice recognition software can't. So I want to make sure that I make that very clear. But the problem comes with the volume and accuracy over all of your calls. By allowing our system to analyze the calls, you get a much more consistent and objective score. And it can be done much more quickly than scoring the calls one at a time by listening to them. So the real benefit of AI, or artificial intelligence, is the ability to review and analyze every call. The calls, and quickly and consistently. And you mentioned it, Mike, it's being able to get rid of the subjectivity. The computer isn't sitting there, with a stomach ache that day and not scoring the call the same as they did yesterday. It scores it the same way every single time.
Well, Jeremiah, I can see a question from some that just came in from one of the listeners that's pretty appropriate for what we're talking about right now. John from Duluth asks, what's the most important part of implementing a successful phone skills training program for my team?
Well, John, it's a great question. It was actually what I was just thinking about. The most important part of any training program is the consistency. One of the reasons we went with scoring of calls with voice recognition software is that over time we could get more and more consistent in our call reviews and analysis. And that allows us to give much more consistent reporting and really track which skills are improving and which ones aren't. But consistency doesn't start with the review or analysis of the calls. Consistency starts with holding your team accountable in a consistent way. You teach the skills they need to know. You review their calls to see how they're adhering to those skills and do that in a consistent way. You may have heard the comment that what you want, you measure. In other words, if you want to be able to get an outcome, you've got to be able to measure that outcome. And Mike, does a fantastic job with his measurements and analysis to give you that data. But if you don't hold the team accountable to what you measure, then it's not going to continue. And you refresh those skills every day in a consistent way. And then you do it again the next month and the next month and the next month.
And that's really the key, isn't it? Okay, tell me a little bit more about how ListenForce delivers the consistent program for improving your phone skills, because so many people make this sort of a monthly review process. But in ListenForce's case, it's more consistent and more frequent to get change.
Sure. I'd love to talk about that. So we start with providing a series of introductory skills videos. These are the Clark skills involved with the connect, listen, acknowledge, recommend, and close the sale. In our next webinar, we'll go over each of these in more detail. And then provide tools to easily access your call recordings. We provide tools to score those phone calls automatically. We provide tools to review those scores, both individually and in aggregate. And we provide tools to help you follow up with your team with specific goals for things they can improve on. And I'll tell you, when people hear this list, if you've got listeners that are still engaged right now listening to this, they're going to go, that's a lot. Like I could go out and run a marathon, but I don't want to wake up every morning and do that hard work to do that. And so I want to point out, we're very aware of how much that sounds like, and so we found ways to make it very easy, where the system does the work, and all you have to do is make sure that it's happening. Instead of you having to add a new employee to your team, or instead of you needing to spend an hour a day, you can actually spend a lot less time than you think, and the system will maintain it for you. And so we provide the tools to deliver that targeted training on specifically the phone skills they need to improve to close more business. And ultimately, we make this as easy as possible so that you can deliver a consistent program to your team. It's not overwhelming. It's easy to access and use. Short videos that get to the point, consistent delivery, and ultimately measurable benchmarks to track progress.
Okay, Jeremiah, I see another question kind of ticking across the bottom of the screen here. And I think it'd be useful if you could just take a moment to kind of cover this question. Sandy from Waco, Texas says, what are the advantages of hiring a company like ListenForce rather than doing it ourselves? So you've talked about how your system is easy to comply with and gives a company some great consistency. What other reasons are there? What are the other reasons?
Well, again, if I'm going to start out by saying, and thank you for the question, if you can do it yourself, you should do it yourself. If you can be consistent and you have the experience to do it, you should do it. Having the manager or the owner engaged on a regular basis is the most powerful thing for your team. But if you're going to do it one week and not the next, I would not do that. It is not going to help you. So consistency is the most important aspect of a training program, for sure. And we can certainly provide that, but another important thing we can provide is objectivity. There's a value in having someone outside your organization tell you objectively that you and your team need to improve. And I cannot tell you how many times I have heard a manager say, I just told them that same thing for the past year, like every day, and you came in here, said the same thing, and they nodded their head like, yeah, that's right. And they're actually listening and doing it. I was speaking with a manager at one of our clients recently as we listened to one of their phone calls, and it was horrible. The person who took the call failed on all of the Clark methodology points that we've talked about, and the caller really wanted to buy their product, and it was like she didn't want them to buy. She was evasive with pricing, wouldn't give any information on setting up an appointment, and it was really painful to listen to. As we discussed the call, the manager started making excuses. Oh, that was Linda. She doesn't even work in sales. She's on our accounting team. Now, I'm sure that Linda is a perfectly nice human being, and she may even be a decent accountant, but she shouldn't be answering their phone or talking to the customer until she gets some training on how to do it. And the manager had lost objectivity in how this team was really doing on the phone. So this this is where we can help. We know Linda. All we know is that we don't know Linda. You do. But what we do know is what the customer hears. We know we have the perspective of not knowing if she had a bad day. We don't know we don't know if that's even her department, and it doesn't matter because I know what the customer hears. And when you stack Linda's performance up against best practices and the standards we've established, we can objectively tell you what is happening. That is very hard to do with the people you work with every day. What this gives you as a manager or owner is a tool that you can grade your people against to measure their performance in a way that leaves out any personal bias. Did they use the phone skills or did they not use the phone skill? And with that information, you can set better goals with your team and hold them accountable. So Mike, before we move on, this reminds me of something else you and I have talked about before. This whole thing really is about taking ownership. Success from this program comes from taking the objective feedback we provide and then doing something about it. If the owners are committed to improving their close ratios on the phone and to increase revenue that can bring, then they will make it happen. If they are not committed, then it really won't matter whether they do their own program or buy ListenForce. If they do their own, they'll give up and go back to business as usual. If they buy ours, they'll go through the motions but won't hold their people accountable and won't see any success. Ultimately, you need to ask yourself as a business owner whether you are committed to success. And the management team needs to own the process, enforce the program, and allow it to help the company win and thrive.
Yeah, I mean, what's ownership mean? I kind of see that as daily oversight, every call. And it's a little bit like the Boy Scouts, right? Praise publicly and correct privately. And if your people who answer the phone know that every day you're tracking missed opportunities, you're tracking booking, and all the detailed metrics that Conversa's tool set will show them, which has just been shocking to me. And everybody I show it to them say, do you realize that on only 1 out of 5 calls do you even get the person's name? And they go, what? That's what it says, right? So what's the daily oversight that if people who are working for you don't do a good job, and it's not always bad either. For instance, the example you were using earlier about Linda the accountant, if other people who are handling phone calls all the time start to realize the professionalism and the tactics and the skills that people are really good on the phone are displaying, the people who are good on the phone, actually kind of get an elevation in status in the company. Linda may jump on the call so that you don't miss the call, but she'll have a better appreciation for how well CSRs are doing when they do a good job.
Absolutely. And I didn't realize you were a Boy Scout, Mike.
Well, so that's a surprise opportunity. That's a surprise feature for today. So we've talked about how a bad phone call can really hurt your business or keep it from getting at least the kind of sales results that we know are possible. We've also talked a little bit about ROI that's available from investing in training and improving how your people have the ability to handle some phone calls. What do you think, Jeremiah?
Well, I hope we've also helped your listeners understand that implementing a successful training program for improving phone skills doesn't have to be overwhelming. And with the right tools and with the right partner, it can be really easy. The results can be dramatic.
So just kind of a recap. We've talked about the importance of consistency. We've talked about the importance of objectivity, and ultimately, what might be the most important thing, the owner's commitment to improve. Is there anything else you want to tell us about what we're going to cover in our next webinar?
Yeah, so in our next section, we'll go into more detail on each of the phone skills your team needs to master, including connecting with the customer, listening, acknowledging what they have to say, making good recommendations, and even closing the sale with them. So, Mike, before we forget, though, in the last webinar I mentioned that I'd have some freebies to share with your listeners.
Okay, all right.
So for participating in this webinar today, we'd like to offer each of your listeners a free assessment. All we need are a few call recordings. We can provide them with a free assessment of where they currently stand. We'll score their calls and give them back a report on what we find.
And thanks, thanks. That's an amazing opportunity, and that our listeners should take advantage of. And for many of you, we already have a lot of recordings that we can sort of dig into. But let's get some more details on this. So the next time we talk about this, let's try to talk about getting the most out of the e-learning platform and share some specific skills that our people should be using on the phone. It should be really helpful. As a way to help you improve your call center performance, Jeremiah and I have something we'd like to give you as another perk for listening to our webinar series. We call it our Stop Screwing Up Your Calls consultation call. Now, that's probably not the most creative name for a consultation phone call, but you're not here to see how fancy I can get. You're here to make sure you get the most business you can out of every phone call that comes into your contracting business. So, if you can tolerate my blunt consultation call name, here's what I'll give you on that call. You will get the 4 simple steps that it will immediately increase your lead production by at least 10% today. The one thing your CSRs can do in 90 seconds or less to book 90% of your calls. The high-impact CSR quick reference cheat sheet. Print and post this right away so that they never forget what to say or how to say it, ever. The exact words that need to be spoken every time to make sure you get the appointment. Phrases to know if you have a customer's commitment to book or if you're about to lose the appointment. How to improve CSR confidence level in 9 phrases or less so they represent your business like it should be represented. The precise phrases that make a caller 4.4 times more likely to buy from you. Plus, as a bonus for scheduling your Stop Screwing Up Your Calls right now, you can also get a copy of our $300,000 4-year-long call center performance study where we analyzed over 600,000 calls with over 30 quintillion. Look it up, it's a big number, combinations of call performance metrics. You will immediately get your very own copy of the entire study on call center performance, which includes all 45 measurements using our proprietary conversation analytics, how to immediately build credibility on every call, how to eliminate buyer confusion and missed opportunities, the best method to handle customer complaints, what customer objection language your CSR should be intently listening for, when silence on the phone is a good thing, when it becomes a deal killer, plus so much more. If there ever was something that was easy for you to do that would significantly improve the trajectory of your contracting business for 2019, scheduling this consultation call would be that one thing. Simply click the button here to schedule your Stop Screwing Up Your Calls consultation call now.